So in the book Social by Matt Lieberman, he makes a point that happiness has very little correlation at all with income. Not even like somewhat of a correlation. He's saying that there's very, very little correlation. And he brings up a lot of good points and science to back this up. Now, this is intriguing because many people just naturally think that if you make more money, generally you will be more happy. And here's the big point he makes. He references something called the relative income argument. And what this means is basically this contrast principle. We are always comparing ourselves to those around us here and now. If you are watching this video, more than likely you are wealthier and you have a lot of things that the richest people on earth 50, 20, 100 years ago, they were not able to have. They were not able to fly across the country to different places, visit these places, watch all these cinematic movies with visual effects. They were paid millions for that, but they were not able to do so. And yet, all these people online, we have all these benefits from the internet, these exceptional video games and so forth, and many of us are still depressed. And he makes the point that that is one of the problems. We are constantly just ratcheting up and comparing ourselves to the standard around us. And that's causing problems. And he gives a great analogy to how the man who earns $50,000 a year, who lives in a neighborhood where most people earn $30,000 a year, that could potentially make him more happy than the man earning $100,000 a year who has neighbors who earn $200,000 a year. So there is that contrast principle. And I would equate it to the analogy of the boy who was born into a family with a lot of money. And that family gave him a lot of money and just let him spend it. He grew up with a certain standard of wealth because he inherited a lot of wealth and was able to spend it. And therefore, his natural standard is much higher than most people's, and therefore he may get a skewed picture of the world. It's kind of like that effect. Let's go on to some scientific studies that really bring this point home. Again, I'm not saying this is true, but he does give a very strong case here. Let me know what you think in the comments. There's a study done, and it is on the happiness of US adults versus their income level. And so they measured their subjective well-being, what they measure, what they think, how well off they are, and their income. And guess what? There was a very marginal relationship between how much a person earned and how happy they were. It was exceptionally modest. And the only real difference came from the fact about whether you were below or above the poverty line. And the reason being, at least how he says it, is if you're below the poverty line, every additional $1,000 you earn dramatically alters your well-being, perhaps in terms of your health, your comfort, basic necessities, and so forth. But once you meet these basic needs, increasing income only adds the tiniest bit to well-being. Another study. This has to do with something called the Easterlin paradox. It's very fascinating. The economist who first discovered it was named Easterlin. Who cares? The point is, they did a study between 1946 and 1990. And basically, rather than measuring just income level, they measured the change in income level. What they thought was that, what if we hold all the other variables constant and just look at your income rising? Perhaps it's not how much you make, but how much more you make over the years. If you're making $50,000, but 10 years down the line you're making $100,000, perhaps it's not the amount, the absolute amount, but it's the increase and change that contributes to happiness. And guess what they found? Basically, after they controlled for inflation, they realized that there was very, very little correlation. And there were many cases where, especially in Japan, where the person's income went up 5 times, and their level of well-being did not increase at all. Now that's very fascinating. Like, we're talking like you earn $10,000 a year, and then a few decades later you're earning $50,000 a year. That's a lot more money, and yet your well-being has not increased at all. Very fascinating. I don't know if well-being is the same thing as happiness, but that's what they're phrasing it as. And so the strongest example of this were Japanese people. Who knows why? So again, I'm a little bit. I have to put my skeptic hat on because personally, I do think these are summarizations of the studies, and he does not go into detail on what type of individuals are being measured here. If it's like an investment banker who's already making like 200,000 a year, and then he goes to 1 million a year, I can understand why that may not really increase his well-being or happiness that much. But if it's like a poor person who makes very little and then he gets 5 times more, it could be a difference. Again, it's still something to bring home though. Like, I do think there's plenty of people out there who think going from $200,000 to a year to 1 million a year would equate to higher levels of happiness. But I do think it's a good example about how other variables are very important. Perhaps what you do in your job, how much you enjoy your job, all these other things. So these are very disconcerting studies. It just blows your mind. It's like your gut feeling is that, okay, the more we earn, the more happiness we should get. But unfortunately, this is not how it is. And so finally, let's go to the big study that everyone references, everyone talks about. It's this whole country by country comparison of average income levels of a country versus their average levels of happiness. So it's a big country by country study comparison. And what they found is that, yes, the more developed countries where the people make on average more money, they have on average higher levels of happiness. Again, average is one of the key words here. It means, there's still a lot of variability, and again, you may not be average. On top of that though, what Matt Lieberman says, is that you cannot use this as some conclusion that, that goes to show income is related to happiness. It may be in a certain extent, who knows? But he makes the point that you cannot use this as a conclusion of any sort because there are so many other variables that are not held constant in this type of study. There's the culture of each country, there is the community, the judicial systems, the schools, the education, the healthcare, the rights for individual freedom, the gross domestic product. All these things may add effects and influences, and there's many more else out there. Like, think about the United States. Think about all the weird, warped mass media influences that are being pumped onto the internet from big movies, stars, paparazzi, pop culture, media, social media, Twitter, Instagram, commercials, pumping out all this stuff that's been that they've spent millions of dollars to psychologically convince you that you need this to look better, or this is what the standard is in terms of beauty. All these things may warp you into a sense of maybe less happiness, depending on the person you are. So that is also a very interesting thing. There's many other factors and variables at play in each of these countries, and it may not just necessarily be the income level that is the correlation, and it does not mean causation at all. But people get that wrong all the time. They always reference that study in terms of happiness. I don't know what it is. I've watched a lot of these TED Talks, and they constantly reference that study. So it's very fascinating. And so I guess the biggest point though is that the one thing I feel like you can get from that study is perhaps just go to the country where the average level of happiness is highest. and don't think it's because of the income level that's causing that. Perhaps it's other influences. Again, that's what I'm saying. Who knows if it will actually work? I know for sure I'm probably not going to move to Uganda or South America. It's just probably not going to happen. So finally, I just want to conclude with this last thing. It's called the hedonic adaptation principle. And the basic idea is that humans are wired psychologically to naturally adapt to a bunch of changes. And so basically, the point of it is to cope. So you don't remain eternally depressed or eternally elated forever. For whatever reason, it's some type of biological principle that may have served us well in the past, still kind of serves us well. And basically, they've measured people, and again, there's this studies done on this, people who have gone through traumatic events. And so what they found is on average, these people revert back to their normal levels of happiness before these events took place, which is very fascinating. It's been shown that there's a lot of these coping and perception mechanisms that help us. The weird thing though is, again, people take this study too far. The key word is on average. So there are people who remain depressed despite, a year passing after these traumatic events where they lost their legs or limbs or developed terminally ill cancer or life-threatening diseases. So again, it's not foolproof. And the second thing is that when they follow the people who achieved a huge spurt of luck, so in this case, they followed people who won a lot of money through the lottery. What they found was that following them a year later, they regressed on average to slightly below their levels of happiness before they were tested and before they won the lottery after a year. And again, it's not a foolproof experiment, again, because the world is a complicated place, and something like winning the lottery is not just a 100% guaranteed, awesome experience. It's not like you win the money and that's good. It can definitely, depending on your situation, your family, your friends, your environment, and whatever, and how you are at managing your money, and a bunch of other factors like what you perceive valuable, it can screw your world over. What do I mean by this? Because if you get $1 million and you don't know how to manage your money, and you just have normal average friends and family, what are they going to do? They're going to be like, oh my goodness, you're rich now. Don't be a cheap, horrible person. Give me at least $10,000. That's nothing. You have $1 million. And lo and behold, your family, your friendships break apart, and then everyone's asking for your money, and everything's broken, and you don't know how to manage your money. So in a year, it's all gone. You don't know what happened to it. You've bought some stupid materialistic stuff that may have helped, but not as much as you thought it would. Maybe you bought a new car, but like the rest of it's just like out the window. It's all gone, and your family and friendships are all ruined, and people show different sides to themselves. And then on top of that, potentially, you can have a bunch of trouble with, actually valuing things and appreciating things anymore. It's like you're potentially, not always, depending on a person. All of a sudden, all these little things, like just weekly poker with your friends, it goes out the window, and then you're trying to live glamorously, and nothing's the same, and then you lose all your money, and then those small things in life aren't as valuable or meaningful or bring as much to you as more, because you've pushed up your standard for what's excellent and what will make you happy. And it's like, who cares about poker with friends? I'm going to go to Las Vegas. So again, it's just one analogy or example showing you how this lottery whole thing is not a true controlled experiment, and also to illustrate that money is not, it's not a foolproof good thing. It has a lot of pros and cons oftentimes. So that's all I really want to say in a nutshell. He does make a good point in this book. Let me know in the comments what you think. I personally think that it can help. Again, if you start utilizing it correctly, and what I mean by that is, again, you know, if you, one thing is to not like show it off to your friends or family too much. Um, Understanding and appreciating the small things and values, and not be, you know, altered or changed with money, and using it for the proper things, for experiences and great relationships with people you value. And I don't know, that's just my amateur interpretation. Thanks for watching. See you later.